The air in a Roman port would have hit you like a physical force, a thick blend of salt and decaying fish. This was the smell of industry, of empire, and of a single secret ingredient that fueled it all. That ingredient was garum, a fermented fish sauce. It was as valuable as gold and as common on Roman tables as ketchup is on ours today. By the end of this story, you will understand how this powerful flavor built fortunes and connected a vast civilization. We will uncover the mystery of its creation and investigate why such a successful industry simply vanished. What forgotten story does your own favorite flavor hold? But what exactly was this potent substance that perfumed the Roman world? Garum was not a single simple fish sauce, but rather an entire family of fermented liquid treasures. The name itself often referred to the most prized variety, a clear amber liquid made from the blood and intestines of fish like mackerel or tuna. This was the premium vintage, the luxury export that commanded prices to rival fine wine. Then there was liquamen, a more general term for a sauce made from whole small fish, creating a saltier, more versatile seasoning used in countless everyday recipes. Muria was a lighter brine, often made from tuna, while allec was the cheap, thick paste left at the bottom of the fermentation vats. This was the fish sauce of the common people, a protein-rich spread that could be slathered on bread. So when a Roman cook reached for a bottle, they were making a deliberate choice, selecting a specific flavor profile and social statement for their dish. This fish sauce was so much more than a simple condiment. To understand Roman food is to understand that garum was in nearly everything. It was the invisible foundation of flavor, the secret backbone of their cuisine. Think of the most versatile sauces in your own kitchen: the ketchup, the soy sauce, the Worcestershire sauce. Garum was all of these combined, a universal taste enhancer that crossed the line between sweet and savory, between humble and luxurious. The most famous surviving Roman cookbook, written by a gourmet named Apicius, reads like a love letter to this pungent liquid. His recipes call for it with astonishing frequency, instructing cooks to add a splash of garum to stews of lamb and leeks, to blend it with honey and vinegar for a glaze for roasted boar, and even to drizzle it over fresh figs and melon. Can you imagine fish sauce on your fruit? For the Roman palate, this was a sublime combination of salty, sweet, and savory. They mixed it with wine to create onogarum, a popular table sauce for dipping bread. They combined it with vinegar for oxygarum, a sharp, pungent dressing for salads and oysters. From the first course to the last, from the street vendor's stall to the emperor's banquet, garum was the constant, unifying flavor. It was the taste of Rome itself, a single, powerful note that resonated through an entire empire's diet. The secret to this empire-wide flavor did not lie in a complex recipe, but in a very specific biological alchemy. Roman producers were not tossing just any fish into their vats. They understood, perhaps through generations of trial and error, that the magic of fermentation required very particular raw materials. The most common foundation for garum was small, oily fish. Think of silvery sardines, sleek mackerel, and pungent anchovies caught in glittering shoals just off the coast. These species were not chosen at random. Their bodies are packed with natural oils and are rich in digestive enzymes, especially in their guts. When layered with salt, these enzymes become the primary engine of the entire process. They essentially self-digest, breaking down the fish proteins into a savory, amino acid-rich liquid over weeks and months. This is why a simple piece of white fish would not have worked. It lacked the necessary oily enzymatic power to transform itself. For the most luxurious and clear garum, known as garum flows or flour of garum, artisans used only the blood and viscera of large tuna. This concentrate of enzymes and blood produced a finer, more potent and strikingly clear sauce that was strained and bottled like a precious liquor. So the next time you see a school of small fish flashing in the water, you are looking at the original, unsung ingredients of a taste that once defined a civilization. So how did they actually make this ubiquitous pungent sauce? We are not left to guess, because a Roman writer named Gargilius Martialis, a man more famous for his work on agriculture, gave us a remarkably detailed recipe. His instructions read like a precise, almost scientific formula. He directs you to take small, whole fish like sardines or anchovies and mix them with salt in a very specific ratio. You would need 1 modius of salt for every 8 modii of fish. To put that in your own kitchen terms, that is roughly 1 part salt for every 8 parts fish by volume. This mixture is then layered in a large, wide-mouthed clay jar. The process is not a quick one. Marchiali's instructs that you must leave this jar out in the sun for 2 to 3 months, stirring the concoction with a stick every single day. This daily stirring is crucial as it exposes every part of the fermenting fish to the air and heat, preventing rot and encouraging the right kind of enzymatic breakdown. After this long, patient wait, you would strain the entire contents of the jar through a fine woven basket. The thick, amber liquid that drips through is the prized garum. What remains in the basket is the allec, the thick, fishy paste that was the cheap, nutritious byproduct. This method from Gargilius Martialis is our most complete picture, but other Roman authors offer brief, confirming glimpses. Pliny the Elder noted that the best garum was made from the guts of mackerel and tuna, while the geographer Strabo wrote that the town of Carthage exported a vast quantity of the sauce. These scattered references all point to the same core process, a slow, sun-brewed alchemy of fish and salt that transforms simple ingredients into a flavor powerful enough to define an era. But this careful recipe required a very specific kind of kitchen. You would not find these pungent vats in a small backyard shed. The Romans built sprawling industrial complexes for garum seaside factories whose ruins still dot the Mediterranean coast today. The heart of these operations was the cetariae. These were not simple clay pots. A cetaria was a massive rectangular tank, often sunk directly into the ground and lined with a special waterproof concrete the Romans called opus signinum. This was a brilliant mixture of lime, crushed pottery, and sand that created a nearly impervious seal, preventing the precious, salty liquid from ever seeping away into the earth. Walking through one of these ancient factories, you would see rows and rows of these sunken vats, looking like a geometric honeycomb built into the ground. Their design was a masterpiece of practical engineering. By being built low and open-topped, they maximized their surface area to the sun. The sun's heat was the primary fuel for the fermentation process, gently cooking the fish and salt mixture for months on end. The wide, shallow shape also allowed for easy access. Workers could lean over the edges to stir the fermenting sludge daily with long poles, just as Gargilius Martialis described. And by clustering these tanks together in large numbers, producers could achieve an incredible scale, creating a sauce not just for a single town, but for export across the entire empire. These silent concrete tanks were the industrial engines of Roman taste, patiently transforming tons of fish into liquid gold under the Mediterranean sun. The silent sun-warmed vats were not merely containers, they were biochemical reactors. Inside each tank, a microscopic battle was taking place, a delicate dance between preservation and transformation. The salt was the first and most crucial guardian. In such high concentrations, it created a hostile environment for the bacteria that caused spoilage and rot. It effectively pulled the water out of any harmful microbes, desiccating and killing them before they could ruin the entire batch. This allowed a very specific, beneficial process to unfold undisturbed. The real magic, however, came from the fish themselves, particularly their guts. These organs are packed with powerful natural enzymes called proteases. Think of these enzymes as billions of microscopic pairs of scissors. When the fish are layered with salt, their cells break down, releasing these proteases into the mixture. They do not wait, they immediately get to work, snipping the long, complex chains of fish protein into much smaller, simpler components. The most important of these are free amino acids, especially one called glutamate. This is the molecule that delivers the savory, mouth-filling taste we now know as umami. So that pungent brew was not rotting, it was meticulously deconstructing itself. Over those long months in the sun, the proteases tirelessly worked, dissolving solid flesh and bone into a concentrated, flavorful liquid. The final product was a pure, natural essence of savoriness, a testament to a process that used biology itself to build a flavor from the ground up. This reliance on biological alchemy meant the entire industry was at the mercy of the weather. You could not simply replicate the garum process in a cooler climate like Britain or Gaul. The sun was a non-negotiable ingredient. Its heat served as the primary furnace for the fermentation vats, gently raising the temperature of the fish and salt mixture to the perfect level for enzymatic activity. In a cool environment, the process would slow to a crawl, or worse, harmful bacteria would win the battle against the preserving salt, resulting in a putrid, inedible sludge instead of a savory sauce. This absolute dependence on consistent warmth is why garum production was concentrated in a very specific sun-drenched belt around the Mediterranean. The most famous production centers were in places like Hispania Baetica in modern-day Spain, the coast of North Africa, and Portugal. These regions offered long, dry, hot summers that provided months of reliable, solar-powered cooking. This also made garum a distinctly seasonal industry. Fishing and production would ramp up in the spring, with vats being filled and set out to bask in the summer sun. The slow fermentation would carry on through the hottest months, with the precious liquid finally being tapped and bottled as autumn approached. Without this precise climatic control, the entire enterprise would fail, locking the secret of true Roman garum to the warm, salty shores of the south. That long wait under the sun was anything but a passive process. A garum maker's work was never done, defined by a daily ritual of careful observation and manual labor. Each morning, a worker would approach the rows of vats, not just to check on progress, but to actively guide it. The most crucial task was the daily stirring. Using a long wooden pole, they would plunge it into the thick, fermenting sludge, churning the contents from the bottom up. This was not a gentle mixing. It was a vigorous effort to reintroduce oxygen, to prevent any layer from becoming stagnant and anaerobic, which would spoil the entire batch with foul-smelling bacteria. As they stirred, they would also watch the surface intently. A frothy scum, a byproduct of the intense microbial and enzymatic activity, would often rise to the top. This impurity had to be carefully skimmed off with a ladle or sieve. Leaving it would taint the final flavor of the precious liquid below, introducing bitter or off notes. This was the true art of the craft, a sensory skill passed down through generations. The maker had to judge the brew's progress by its smell, its texture, and the behavior of the bubbles. They were not just factory laborers, they were fermentation artists, nurturing the transformation with a patient, practiced hand. After 2 or 3 months of this relentless daily care, the moment of truth would finally arrive. The frantic activity in the vat would subside, the mixture would settle, and a deep, clear amber liquid would separate from the thick, pasty solids. Only then could the first quality garum be carefully drawn off, a testament to months of unwavering dedication. This was not mass production in our modern sense. It was slow, deliberate food craftsmanship on an industrial scale. The quality of the garum flowing from those vats was as stratified as Roman society itself. At the very top of this pungent pyramid was a legendary sauce known as garum-today. The name translates to the sauce of the allies, but this was no ordinary condiment. It was produced in limited quantities in Roman Spain, made exclusively from the blood and viscera of prime mackerel. The result was a clear amber liquid with a complex, almost floral aroma and a powerful, savory punch that was entirely free of any fishy bitterness. A single small bottle of this liquid luxury could cost the equivalent of a soldier's monthly wages, making it a status symbol as potent as any fine wine or perfume. This was the garum served at the tables of senators and wealthy merchants, a deliberate display of wealth and refined taste that announced one's place at the very peak of the social order. Just below this elite tier was the workhorse of Roman flavor, liquamen. This was the garum most people knew and used daily, a sauce made from whole small fish like sardines and anchovies. It was saltier and more robust than the delicate garum-today, a versatile seasoning that appeared in virtually every recipe in the common kitchen. Think of it not as a rare vintage, but as the table salt and soy sauce of the ancient world, essential, affordable, and utterly indispensable for creating the foundational taste of Roman food. This was the sauce that would have been splashed into the stew pot by a tavern keeper or used by a legionary cook to flavor a gritty wheat porridge, and at the very bottom of the barrel, literally, was allec. This was not a liquid sauce at all, but the thick, gritty paste of sediment and tiny, undissolved fish bones left behind after the precious garum was strained off. For the wealthy, allec was a worthless byproduct, sometimes used as a fertilizer or even as an ingredient in dog food. but for the vast population of slaves and the urban poor, it was a vital source of nutrition. Allec was a protein-rich, pungent spread that could be slathered on a piece of coarse bread, providing a powerful, fishy flavor and essential calories for a long day of labor. So the entire production cycle created a perfect mirror of the empire's social hierarchy. The rich enjoyed the refined, clear essence, the middle classes used the functional, everyday liquid, and the poor survived on the cheap, solid remains. Every layer of Roman life, from the Senate house to the slave quarters, had its own distinct taste of the sea. This pungent, fishy liquid was far more than a foodstuff, it was an economic engine. The scale of the garum trade was staggering, an industrial enterprise that rivaled the empire's most famous exports like olive oil and wine. At its peak, the Roman world was consuming millions of liters of this sauce every single year. To transport this ocean of flavor, producers relied on the ancient shipping container, the amphora. These distinctive clay jars with their pointed bottoms and two handles were stacked by the thousands in the holds of merchant ships. They became so synonymous with the sauce that archaeologists can often identify a garum amphora just by its shape and the residue left inside. The most famous production centers became industrial powerhouses in their own right. Towns along the southern coast of Spain, in a region the Romans called Hispania Baetica, were the undisputed giants of the industry. The ruins of their factories with vast arrays of cement vats sprawl for acres. One single workshop in a town like Belo Claudia could produce tens of thousands of liters per season. This was not cottage industry. This was mass production on a scale the world would not see again for over 1,000 years. The wealth generated was immense, creating a class of fabulously rich garum merchants, the fish sauce barons of the ancient world. Their fortunes were built not on gold or land, but on the slow, sun-brewed fermentation of millions of tiny fish. This lucrative trade created a complex and far-reaching economic web. It employed not only the fishermen and the factory workers, but also the potters who made the millions of amphorae, the coopers who built the barrels for overland transport, the merchants who brokered the deals, and the sailors who braved the seas. A single shipment of garum from Spain to Rome could keep hundreds of people employed along its entire journey. The Roman state itself took a keen interest, taxing the trade heavily and ensuring that a steady stream of this valuable commodity and the revenue it generated flowed into the imperial coffers. Garum was in every sense liquid capital. It was a currency of taste that built fortunes and fueled the economic machine of an empire, proving that sometimes the most powerful forces in history are not found on the battlefield, but quietly fermenting in a clay jar. You cannot talk about garum without confronting its most unforgettable feature, the smell. A functioning garum factory was not a place for the faint of heart. While the finished sauce in a sealed bottle might have been a prized possession, the process of making it released an odor so powerful and pervasive that Roman writers frequently complained about it. The philosopher Seneca, a man known for his stoic endurance, openly despised the stench. He wrote with palpable disgust about the foul vapors that rose from these fish sauce workshops, considering the entire business to be a dirty and unworthy trade. His complaints give us a clear first-hand account of just how overwhelming the aroma must have been. This was not a subtle, salty sea breeze. It was the thick, heavy, and deeply complex odor of millions of fish slowly fermenting under the blazing sun, a potent combination of brine, decay, and intense umami that could carry for miles. Because of this unavoidable reality, these industrial centers were almost always built on the outskirts of port towns, strategically placed downwind of the main residential areas. The economic benefits of garum were immense, but no one wanted to live next door to the source. Can you picture the scene? A prosperous Roman merchant living in a villa on the hill would have enjoyed the financial rewards of his garum investments, but on a hot, still summer day, he would have been constantly reminded of exactly where his wealth was coming from. Every breath of wind would have carried that unmistakable, funky signature, the smell of money being made one putrid vat at a time. It adds a deeply human and slightly humorous layer to our understanding of this ancient industry. The Romans loved the flavor it produced, but even they had to admit that its creation was a smelly business. The true scale of this industry becomes undeniable when you walk among its ruins. Scattered along the Mediterranean coast, the skeletal remains of garum factories stand as silent monuments to a forgotten flavor empire. Perhaps the most breathtaking of these sites is Belo Claudia in southern Spain. Here you can step directly onto the factory floor, tracing the entire production process with your own eyes. The heart of the operation is a sprawling courtyard, open to the sky and lined with rows of deep, rectangular tanks sunk into the earth. These are the cetariae. They are not small pots, but industrial-scale vats, each one large enough to hold hundreds of gallons of fish and salt. The Romans lined them with their signature waterproof concrete, a pinkish mix of lime and crushed pottery that still feels smooth to the touch after 2,000 years. The layout is brilliantly practical. The vats are arranged in neat rows, allowing workers to move efficiently between them for the daily stirring and skimming. And just steps away, you will find the smaller salting tanks, where the initial preparation of the fish would have taken place before they were layered into the main fermentation vats. The entire complex is positioned right on the beach with a direct view of the sea where the fish were caught. This was a seamless, integrated production line designed for maximum efficiency from the net to the amphora. Across the border in Portugal, the ruins of Troia offer another staggering glimpse. This was not just a single workshop, it was an entire industrial town dedicated to fish sauce. The site stretches for over a kilometer along the Sado River estuary, a vast landscape of crumbling walls and exposed vats. Archaeologists have uncovered dozens of separate factories here, each with its own set of cetariae. Walking through Troia, you get a sense of overwhelming, almost modern industrial output. The ground is littered with millions of fragments of broken amphorae, the shattered remains of the containers that carried this liquid gold to every corner of the empire. But the real genius at Troia lies in the details you might easily miss. Look closely at the ground between the vats, and you will see the carefully engineered drainage channels. These shallow gutters were essential for managing the messy, salty runoff from the production process, preventing the entire area from becoming a swamp. They directed wastewater away from the working areas and back toward the sea, a simple but crucial piece of infrastructure that kept the massive operation clean and functional. These are not just piles of old stones. They are the tangible, physical proof of an industry that operated on a scale we can scarcely believe, a place where the air once hung thick with the potent smell of profit and the sea itself was being transformed, vat by vat, into the taste of Rome. But what did this legendary sauce actually taste like on the plate? We can move beyond the ruins and the recipes to experience it for ourselves by recreating a classic Roman dish. Let us bring the flavor of garum back to life with a simple yet astonishing recipe from Apicius for pulled pork with dried figs. You will need about 2 pounds of pork shoulder, a dozen dried figs, a cup of robust red wine, a tablespoon of honey, a generous splash of olive oil, and the star of our show, a modern garum substitute. A good quality Vietnamese fish sauce like nuoc mam is the closest you can easily find today, capturing that same powerful umami and salty kick. Start by slowly braising the pork shoulder in the wine and olive oil until it is so tender it falls apart with a gentle pull of a fork. While the pork cooks, simmer the dried figs in a little water until they are soft and plump, then mash them into a thick, sweet paste. Now for the magic. Shred the cooked pork and combine it with the fig paste, a drizzle of honey, and a healthy pour of that fish sauce, probably about 2 or 3 tablespoons to start. The result is a dish that is simultaneously familiar and utterly foreign to the modern palate. The rich, savory pork is lifted by the sweet fruitiness of the figs, but the fish sauce does something extraordinary. It does not taste fishy. Instead, it dissolves into the background, amplifying the meaty flavor of the pork and tying the sweet and savory elements together into a deep, complex, and perfectly balanced whole. This is the secret weapon the Romans understood so well. Or consider a patina of pears, a kind of baked fruit custard. You would puree ripe pears with eggs, a little wine, and a dash of pepper, then bake it until set. Just before serving, a Roman cook would drizzle it with a reduction of fish sauce and honey. The combination of sweet, juicy pear with that salty, savory syrup is a revelation, a taste combination that challenges everything we think we know about flavor pairing. Cooking with garum is not about adding a fishy note. It is about unlocking a dimension of savoriness that makes every other ingredient in the dish taste more profoundly of itself. This is the true legacy of Roman garum, a culinary principle that is just as powerful in your kitchen today as it was 2,000 years ago. That powerful, savory taste was more than just a flavor enhancer. It was a hidden source of vital nutrition. While its origins in decomposing fish might seem unappealing to us, garum was a nutritional powerhouse for the average Roman. This fermented liquid was packed with high-quality protein that had been broken down into a form the body could easily absorb. It was also a rich, natural source of iodine, a critical mineral for thyroid health that prevented goiter and other deficiencies, especially for populations living far from the sea. Most importantly, the enzymatic breakdown created a concentrated broth of free amino acids, the building blocks of protein. This made it an excellent way to supplement the diet, providing essential nutrients that might have been missing from a simple meal of bread and porridge. The Romans themselves understood that this sauce offered benefits beyond mere taste. The natural historian Pliny the Elder wrote extensively about its supposed medicinal properties. He recommended garum as a powerful digestive aid, believing a small dose could settle an upset stomach and stimulate the appetite. More surprisingly, he recorded that it was used as a topical treatment for a variety of ailments, including ulcers and even dog bites. While we might question the efficacy of pouring fish sauce on a wound, this belief highlights how deeply garum was woven into the fabric of Roman life, straddling the line between pantry staple and medicine cabinet essential. It was a functional food in the truest sense, a daily condiment that delivered a potent dose of flavor and nutrition in every single splash. The volcanic ash that buried Pompeii did more than preserve buildings, it perfectly sealed a moment of daily Roman life. Among the countless treasures unearthed, archaeologists have found the most direct evidence of the garum trade: ceramic jars still sealed and bearing the maker's mark. These are not empty containers, but time capsules filled with the actual 2,000-year-old sauce. When researchers carefully opened one such jar, they did not find a mysterious, unidentifiable sludge. Instead, they found a residue that confirmed everything the ancient text had described. Chemical analysis revealed a high concentration of amino acids, the scientific signature of that powerful umami taste, and the specific DNA of fish from the anchovy family. Here was definitive proof, locked under volcanic rock for centuries, of the precise ingredients and the biological process the Romans had mastered. This was not just a label on a jar, it was the sauce itself, offering a taste, in a manner of speaking, of a genuine Roman product. The ashfall acted like a giant pause button, capturing a thriving industry in its final moments of operation. We can see the jars lined up in a shop, ready for sale, or stored in a wealthy homeowner's pantry, next to the olive oil and wine. This single catastrophic event gave us an unparalleled snapshot of commerce and cuisine, freezing a bustling economic activity in a tragic but illuminating tableau. The people of Pompeii were using the very same sauce from the very same batches that we read about in the recipes of Apicius. It connects us to their world not through words or ruins, but through the tangible chemical ghost of a flavor they were about to enjoy on the very day their world ended. Those broken pottery fragments scattered across ancient sites are far more than just trash. They are the secret ledgers of the Roman garum trade, each one a piece of a global puzzle. The key to this puzzle was the amphora, a container so perfectly designed it became the universal shipping vessel of the ancient world. For garum, producers used a very specific type of amphora, one that archaeologists have classified as Dressel 7 through 11. You can recognize these jars by their distinctive shape, with a tall, cylindrical body that tapers down to a solid, spike-like base. This pointed bottom was not just for show, it was a stroke of pure logistical genius. On a ship, these amphorae could be stacked tightly together, their pointed bases nestled securely between the rounded shoulders of the jars in the row below, creating a stable, interlocking cargo that could withstand the violent pitching of a stormy sea. Once on land, the spike could be easily driven into the soft earth of a warehouse floor, holding the heavy jar perfectly upright and ready for use. But the shape of the jar is only half the story. The real treasure is often found on its side, in the form of faded painted letters known as tituli picti. These were the original shipping labels, painted directly onto the clay before the jar was fired. A titulus pictus might tell you everything about the jar's precious contents. It could name the producer, the specific type of garum inside, the name of the merchant who owned the shipment, and even a quality control note from the inspector who approved the batch. Think of it as a 2,000-year-old barcode, holding all the data needed to track this bottle of fish sauce from its origin to its final destination. It is through these painted whispers that we can reconstruct the incredible journey of a single jar, A jar manufactured in a factory in southern Spain, its label boasting of prime liquamen, might be unloaded from a ship in the port of Ostia near Rome. From there, it could be transferred to a barge and sent up the Tiber River to supply the capital's countless taverns and wealthy households. But the story does not end there. Empty amphorae were rarely worth shipping back, so they were often reused or simply discarded, creating massive garbage dumps known as middens. It is in these ancient landfills from the Middle East to the cold, damp frontier of Roman Britain that archaeologists find the broken pieces of Spanish garum jars. Finding a fragment of a Dressel 7 amphora in a fort near Hadrian's Wall is a stunning discovery. It means that a Roman legionary, stationed at the very edge of the known world, could season his lentil stew with the exact same fish sauce that was being enjoyed by a senator in Rome or a merchant in Alexandria. This humble clay jar did more than just carry a condiment. It physically connected the entire Roman Empire with a single, powerful, and unmistakable flavor. That very jar of garum on a senator's table represented a deep social contradiction. While every level of Roman society consumed the sauce, the business of its creation was mired in a pungent cloud of snobbery. The elite who savored the refined, clear garum-saucerum in their delicately seasoned dishes would have been the first to scorn the men who made it. Garum production was considered a filthy, disreputable trade, the work of freedmen and the lower classes, carried out in stinking factories safely downwind of polite society. The Roman statesman and philosopher Seneca made his disdain perfectly clear, writing that the garum maker's shop was a place of foul vapors and that the very vessels used in the process were, in his view, instruments of putrefaction rather than cooking. He associated the entire enterprise with vice, arguing that a palate that could appreciate such a powerfully flavored sauce was a palate that had been corrupted. This is the central paradox of Roman garum. The wealthiest citizens were happy to enjoy the financial profits from their garum workshops and to consume the luxurious final product, but they held their noses both literally and figuratively at the gritty industrial reality of its creation. Imagine a wealthy Roman merchant entertaining guests at a lavish dinner party. He would proudly serve dishes rich with expensive garum, a subtle demonstration of his refined taste and wealth. Yet if the wind shifted, bringing the unmistakable stench of the fermenting vats from his own factory on the coast, he would likely apologize to his guests for the offensive odor, distancing himself from the very source of his fortune. The sauce itself could even be a marker of class within the meal. Using a delicate splash of the clear, first-pressed garum to enhance a recipe was the height of sophistication. But to drown your food in the cheaper, fishier allec paste was the mark of a common laborer with crude, unrefined tastes. This complex social dance reveals a truth that feels remarkably modern. It is the ancient equivalent of loving the convenience of a smartphone while disapproving of the mining conditions that produced its components. The Romans needed garum, they loved its taste, and they grew rich from its trade, but they never fully made peace with the smelly, unglamorous work that put it on their tables. Yet this vast, pungent empire of taste did not last forever. The industrial-scale garum factories, with their sprawling cement vats, fell silent. The millions of amphorae stopped traveling the shipping lanes. The global brand of Roman fish sauce seemingly vanished from history. So what happened to a flavor that was once as fundamental as bread? The answer is not a single event, but a slow unraveling of the world that made garum possible. As the political and economic structure of the Western Roman Empire fragmented, the first thing to collapse was the intricate trade network. Garum was a luxury good that relied on peace and stability. Merchant ships needed safe sea lanes and protected ports to transport those heavy, fragile amphorae from Spain to Rome and beyond. When that security dissolved under pressure from invasions and political chaos, the long-distance trade in bulk goods like fish sauce became impossibly risky and expensive. The economic engine that powered the garum industry simply ran out of fuel. A Spanish factory owner could no longer be sure his shipment would reach a market in Gaul or that he would be paid in reliable currency. The complex interconnected system that turned local fish into a global commodity broke down into isolated, self-sufficient pieces. But does this mean everyone just stopped eating garum? Not exactly. It is more likely that the grand, stinking factories closed, but the knowledge and the taste for the sauce did not disappear overnight. In many coastal villages, the practice probably continued on a much smaller, household scale. A family might ferment a small clay pot of fish in their own courtyard, making just enough for their own needs, much as people have always made preserves and pickles. The industrial production vanished, but the recipe may have simply gone home. Another powerful force was shifting the cultural winds. The rise of Christianity brought with it new ideas about food, the body, and what was considered appropriate to eat. While the Bible does not explicitly forbid fish sauce, a new spiritual focus began to emphasize plainness, simplicity, and abstinence from certain sensory pleasures. The complex, pungent, and powerfully aromatic world of Roman cuisine, with its elaborate sauces and decadent flavors, could have been seen as a symbol of the old, pagan world of excess. A simpler, plainer diet was sometimes promoted as a path to piety. This is not to say that Christians stopped using salt or flavoring their food, but the cultural obsession with a specific, potent fermented fish sauce may have gradually faded, replaced by more local and less provocative seasonings. The final theory is perhaps the most simple: taste change. Just as certain food fads come and go in our own time, the Roman palate, which had adored the intense umami kick of garum for centuries, may have simply evolved. New influences from Germanic and other cultures entering the empire introduced different culinary traditions. Without the massive advertising campaign of a unified Roman culture and its thriving commerce, the desire for that specific funky flavor might have slowly dwindled. So the story of garum's decline is not a mystery with one solution, but a tapestry woven from threads of economic collapse, cultural shift, and the simple, unpredictable evolution of human taste. The factories fell into ruin, but the ghost of that flavor never truly left the shores of the Mediterranean. That powerful Roman taste did not vanish from the earth, it simply went into hiding. The ghost of garum survived the empire's collapse, traveling along forgotten trade routes and resurfacing in kitchens thousands of miles and years away from Rome. Its most direct descendant is found clinging to the Amalfi coast of Italy, in a small town called Cetariae. Here, fishermen produce colatura di allec-sauce, a clear amber liquid made by layering anchovies and salt in wooden barrels and aging them for months in the sun. The process is a near-perfect echo of the Roman method, a family recipe passed down through generations that may well be a living relic of the ancient garum trade. This modern Italian delicacy is the closest we can get to tasting the liquamen that once flavored a legionary stew, but the Roman palate for fermented fish had an even wider reach, crossing continents and cultures. Sailors and merchants likely carried the basic concept along the spice routes, where the idea took root and evolved in the warm climates of Southeast Asia. There it blossomed into the foundational sauces of entire regional cuisines. Vietnamese nuoc mam and Thai nam pla are not just similar to garum, they are its spiritual and biochemical successors. They are made from layers of small fish, usually anchovies, fermented with sea salt in large vats for over a year. The result is that same potent, umami-rich liquid that the Romans would have instantly recognized as their own. This is not a coincidence, but a testament to a universal culinary truth. When you have an abundance of fish and a need to preserve them, fermentation with salt is a brilliant, logical discovery that could be made independently in different parts of the world. The Romans simply industrialized it on a scale that would not be seen again for over a millennium. Even the familiar bottle of Worcestershire sauce in your own cupboard tells a piece of this story. While its recipe includes tamarind and spices unknown to the Romans, its foundation is fermented anchovies. It is a Victorian reinterpretation of that ancient, powerful taste, created by British merchants who were trying to replicate an Indian sauce and accidentally stumbled back upon a Roman principle. So the next time you sprinkle a few drops of fish sauce into a stir-fry or shake Worcestershire onto a steak, you are participating in a culinary tradition that is 2,000 years old. You are using the direct descendant of the very same sauce that connected a Roman senator, an Egyptian farmer, and a frontier soldier. The Roman Empire fell, but its favorite flavor never really went away. It simply found new bottles and new names, proving that a truly great taste is truly timeless. The ghost of garum has left its chemical signature on history. We no longer need to rely on ancient texts or broken pottery alone to understand its secrets. Modern science has given us a time machine, one that can analyze the invisible residues trapped inside those 2,000-year-old amphorae. The key technology is called gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. This powerful tool allows scientists to identify the specific organic molecules left behind by the evaporated sauce. It works by vaporizing a tiny sample of the ancient residue and then separating its chemical components, effectively weighing and identifying each molecule to create a precise fingerprint of what was once inside the jar. This process has revealed astonishing details. Researchers can now confirm the presence of fish proteins and pinpoint the exact amino acids that gave garum its powerful umami punch. More than that, they can distinguish between the different grades of sauce. The residue from a jar that once held cheap allec shows a much higher concentration of fish bone fragments and fatty acids, the gritty signature of the bottom of the barrel paste. In contrast, the chemical ghost of a premium garum-sauce reveals a purer, more refined profile, dominated by those savory amino acids with very little fish oil or sediment. This is the scientific proof of the social stratification we read about in Roman texts, but the analysis goes even further, into the realm of geographic origin. By studying the stable isotopes in the fish proteins, a kind of atomic signature that reflects the local water and diet of the fish, scientists can sometimes trace a jar of garum back to its specific fishing grounds. A jar found in a Roman villa in France might chemically match the waters off the coast of southern Spain, confirming it as a luxury import. Another container from a military site in Germany might show a signature from the Black Sea, mapping out a trade route we never knew existed. This is not just confirming history, it is rewriting it with hard data. Each microscopic residue is a captured moment, a precise recipe from a specific workshop, finally giving a voice to the silent, empty jars that once held the flavor of an empire. The lingering ghost of that Roman flavor has not gone unchallenged. A small but dedicated group of food historians and experimental archaeologists have taken on the ultimate culinary quest to resurrect true garum from the pages of history. They are not simply reading the recipes of Gargilius Martialis, they are following them to the letter. This begins with sourcing the right fish, typically fresh anchovies or mackerel, and mixing them with pure sea salt in that precise 1:8 ratio. The mixture is packed into wide-mouthed clay pots or wooden barrels, replicating the ancient cetariae as closely as possible. Then comes the long, patient wait, the part of the process no written text can fully capture. The pots are left outside for months, exposed to the full heat of the summer sun, just as they would have been in Roman Spain. The first and most immediate challenge is one the ancient writers complained about: the smell. Modern garum makers report an aroma that is overwhelmingly potent, a funky, briny cloud that announces the experiment to the entire neighborhood. It is not a fresh ocean scent, but a deeply complex, almost aggressive odor of transformation that can be difficult to endure day after day. The daily ritual of stirring with a long stick is another hurdle. It is a physical, messy task, plunging the pole into the thickening sludge and churning up gases that have been building for 24 hours. This is not a clean, clinical process. It is a hands-on sensory engagement with a living, fermenting substance. The maker must become a guardian of the brew, watching for the right color change, the correct consistency, and the disappearance of the frothy scum that signals a successful batch. After 2 or 3 months of this careful, smelly vigil, the moment of truth arrives. The mixture settles and a clear, amber liquid slowly separates from the pasty solids at the bottom of the jar. The first time a modern experimenter carefully strains this liquid and holds a bottle of their own homemade garum up to the light, it is a profound connection to the past. The final taste test is the ultimate reward. Those who have tasted these modern recreations consistently describe a flavor that is startlingly familiar. It bears little resemblance to the fishy, pungent aroma of its creation. Instead, it is a powerful, savory umami bomb that enhances everything it touches. The most common comparison is not to Western condiments, but to high-quality Southeast Asian fish sauces. The clear, first-pressed garum is often described as incredibly similar to a premium Vietnamese nuoc mam or a Thai nam pla, possessing that same deep, salty savoriness without an overtly fishy finish. This is the final, beautiful confirmation of the Roman process. It demonstrates that the alchemy of fish, salt, and sun produces a universal taste, a fundamental fifth flavor that different cultures have discovered and cherished independently. The successful modern garum maker is left with a powerful realization. They are not just making a sauce, they are bottling a 2,000-year-old principle, a taste that once unified an empire and now, once again, bridges the gap between ancient history and the modern palate. This persistent idea of garum as a sauce of rotten fish is one of history's great culinary misunderstandings. The reality was a world away from simple decay. Creating garum was not about letting fish spoil, it was about harnessing a powerful biological transformation, a carefully managed fermentation nearly identical to the process that turns milk into cheese. Just as a cheesemaker carefully cultures milk to produce a specific flavor and texture, the Roman garum maker controlled every variable, from the fish to salt ratio to the daily stirring, to guide the ingredients toward a desired and delicious outcome. The salt was the crucial guardian in this process. In such high concentrations, it created an environment where the bacteria responsible for rot and putrefaction simply could not survive. It was a preservative so powerful it actively prevented the fish from rotting in the way we commonly understand. Instead, a different, beneficial process took center stage. The magic came from the fish's own internal organs, which are packed with powerful digestive enzymes. When mixed with salt, these enzymes activated and began breaking down the fish proteins. This is not decomposition, it is a form of predigestion. The enzymes meticulously snip the long, complex protein chains into simpler, savory molecules, primarily the amino acid glutamate, which we now recognize as the pure taste of umami. The entire months-long operation was a testament to control. The maker was not a passive observer of rot, but an active director of fermentation, using the sun as a gentle heat source and daily stirring to ensure an even, aerobic process. The final product was not a putrid sludge, but a refined, complex liquid, as different from a spoiled fish as a fine, aged Parmesan cheese is from a carton of sour milk. The Romans prized the clear, amber quality of the best garum, a visual testament to its purity and the careful craft that prevented it from ever being merely rotten. The world of Roman literature offers a pungent counterpoint to the cookbook recipes. For every apicius praising its flavor, a satirist like Martial was ready to mock its overpowering social presence. In his sharp, witty poems, garum frequently appears as a marker of social climbing and vulgar taste. He paints scenes of a stingy host serving cheap, low-quality allec to his guests while secretly hoarding the finest garum-saucerum for himself. This was more than a joke about bad dinner parties. It was a commentary on the new money and pretension that flavored Roman society. The sauce had become a shorthand for ambition and poor judgment, a liquid symbol of someone trying too hard to buy their way into a higher class. The poet Juvenal took this critique even further, his pen dripping with scorn. In his famous satires, he rages against the corruption of the city and the decline of traditional Roman values. Within this moral decay, garum often plays a supporting role as an agent of decadence. He describes grotesque feasts where the sauce is poured over extravagant and exotic dishes, its powerful smell and taste representing a palate, and by extension a culture that had lost its way. He associated its intense flavor with the kind of sensory overload that corrupted simple Roman virtues. Yet this very criticism proves how deeply garum had penetrated the Roman psyche. It was so common, so everyday, that it became a perfect tool for writers. They could use it as a recognizable emblem for everything from social inequality to moral decay, confident that every single reader would understand the reference. The fact that it could be both the foundation of hot cuisine and a punchline in a satire reveals its true cultural weight. This humble fish sauce was not just on their tables, it was woven into their very language, a versatile metaphor for the flavors and flaws of their entire world. Garum was far more than a simple condiment, it was a force of cultural gravity. This pungent liquid began as a practical solution for preserving fish, yet it fermented into a cornerstone of an entire civilization, shaping its economy, its cuisine, and its very identity. From the sun-baked industrial vats of Spain to the farthest military outposts on the misty frontier of Britain, this single flavor created a tangible link between every corner of the Roman world. A senator in Rome dipping his bread in premium garum-saucerum was participating in the same sensory experience as a legionary flavoring his porridge with a cheaper grade, both connected by an invisible thread of shared taste that stretched for thousands of miles. Its production built immense fortunes and fueled a complex web of trade, while its presence on the table stratified society from the clear, luxurious essence of the elite down to the gritty, nutritious paste of the poor. The story of garum is the story of Rome itself, a tale of ingenuity, industry, and a relentless pursuit of flavor that bound a sprawling empire together with the taste of the sea. So as we look back at this forgotten staple, it is worth asking a final question. What everyday item in our own pantries, something as common to us as ketchup or soy sauce, might future archaeologists one day uncover with the same sense of wonder? What simple, modern flavor might they study to understand the hidden connections of our global world? Share your thoughts in the comments below.